I think Deb forwarded some data to you via email, I'm not quite sure.
If you got it or not.
If you didn't, we can get that to you, but some of the data that is not there is about our current seniors. We have 22 seniors currently. Of those 22, 20 have been placed at 2 or 4 year institutions, most of them 4. Like I have one that's going to a 2 year college, and one who has gone to the United States Army. That's a good statistic. I make my kids apply for scholarships because they wouldn't do it on their own, so I make them. Out of the 22 seniors, 125 scholarships were applied to. 125. And of that 125, now scholarship monies are still coming in. So far, 14 have been awarded scholarships in the amount of almost $50,000. Yay them.
Okay, now, these are just avid kids because of these teachers they have and the relationship they have with their kids. They're doing these things. Deb, what was the graduation? How many of them went to college last year?
100% placement, 100% last year, and this year 99 so far, unless something happens with one of them who didn't want to put stamps on his envelopes. But
a little too hard. A little too hard after doing all that.
yeah, I know. But we had 100% placement last year, and a majority of those went to Garden City Community College. I had the numbers with me, but approximately 12 were at Kansas universities, Pitt State, KU. Three went to KU, Fort Hays, Wichita State. But a lot of them stayed here. One reason they stay here is it's close to home, it's the less expensive, and a lot of parents really aren't ready to let their students go yet.
And our kids are still helping parents pay bills.
Right.
Too. So they work. And so if they're here, they can still work and help mom and dad.
But it does make a difference. The college visits make a huge difference because most of them have not been on any other campus. Some of them have been to Garden City Community College, but a majority of them haven't been to any other college to visit. And they get a feel for that college, and they get a feel for what's expected of them. And in the brochure, there's a picture of our junior class at KU, and they had a nice presentation for us, and anyway, it went very well. It went well. It grows them up.
Last but not least, the thing that really impresses me is teachers at my building can say, I know this is an avid kid, when they go into the class and not know anything else about them, because the kid is prepared, the kid is organized, the kid knows what's expected in class. So when you can tell a difference, we need to have a whole school of avid kids. So teachers cannot tell the difference.
And
so we need to spread the avid concept to more of our buildings.
And that is the purpose of the grant. We want to start small. We have students who have been taking Cornell notes now for 4 years, 5 years, I guess it's our 5th year. And while some teachers may say you need to take notes, assigning note-taking and teaching note-taking are 2 different things. And so that's why it's critical that the professional development that we send some new people to Summer Institute just to learn some of those aspects of that instructional strategy for note-taking. So the goal of this grant is that all teachers at Garden City High School will be using some form of note-taking and teaching note-taking in their classes. Even if it's a PE class, they can do a learning log or a music class. So we are expecting that writing, that level of writing to begin. And that's the focus of this grant.
If I can dovetail off what Mr. Morales said, I'm listening to some of the kids that come in and talk to us about whatever it is that they're doing. I think we were at the high school one time with a presentation with some avid kids, and I would say that they rank probably in the top 5 groups at the high school for being able to get their point across very eloquently and succinctly, and did a really good job. So, you know, kudos to you on that too.
It comes from a couple of things we do. Socratic seminars, philosophical chairs, tutorials. They're in front of a group every week presenting a problem and discussing it in front of their peers.
I did have a question. I was just wondering, at the colleges that the students are applying to, do they have an understanding of what the students have done in the AVID program and what the AVID program is?
We certainly do. Wichita State, Emporia State, Kansas State, Fort Hays, McPherson College, they all look at Avid students because they have extra scholarships for
For
students
Avid
who are in
students.
Avid. Wichita State has an Avid program on their campus because because Avid is a K-14 system. So Wichita State has that in place.
So there's some distinct advantages to this participation at this level to when you're moving to the next level.
Or even as peer tutors, our students who are peer tutors can put that on a resume, and they can get a job at K-State, they can get a job even tutoring at KU, because Lawrence has Avid as well now. So some of our students have applied to be tutors who are at KU. So they have an opportunity for a part-time employment while they're going to school.
Do community colleges participate in Avid?
Some do. And a model is in Texas at Odessa. They're a K-14 system, and they do.
Does
there.
Garden City Community College?
Not yet,
Not yet.
But they know about it.
but
They know about
they know a
our
little bit
kids
about it, they
and-
do. And they have a good tutoring system
Yeah,
here.
ETS.
But, and one of our best tutors came from the community college. So, and we have some past grads this year who are tutors for us, which is a wonderful thing to have, because they know the process.
And I will say something I'm not very proud of, really. I believe Liberal started Avid the same time we did.
Oh, no.
No.
After us?
They've been going about
Before.
10 years.
They're ahead of us. Anyway, they're a demonstration school now.
They
In
make
other words, you can
demo
go
stats.
learn how to implement Avid. So we have one 60 miles away if we
You
want.
wanna go visit.
Which, not good to say, but they're ahead of us on that.
Not for long.
Yeah, not for long, you're right. When we know what we're competing, we're very good at it, when we know what we're competing in. Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Dennis, I guess we'll move to the second please.
The group of teachers, the last time, well, I guess it was 2 board meetings ago, presented to you a recommendation in that group. And so tonight, we're looking for some direction, some action on your part of what direction that needs to go. You have the recommendation, and the administrative team supports the teacher recommendation as presented.
I did have some comments, and I still have great difficulty in supporting the mandatory aspect of this program. I do believe that this program can be implemented with fidelity, with all of the other aspects intact, and not include the teacher making the final decision as to whether the child should be promoted or retained. I think that is the parent's prerogative. I think it's incumbent on us to provide the parent with as much information about the success of their child in the classroom and the ramifications of either promotion or retention of that child. But I think in the final analysis, we are invading the rights of the parent and the rights of families to take that decision from them. I think we would enhance the cooperation between teachers and families and the long-term success of that child by allowing the families to do what we have always done in the past, which is to make that final decision. I reviewed the tapes of when we were first presented this program for first grade readiness, and there was many of the teachers who discussed it at that time said that they could go either way. So I don't see why we need to continue to remove that final decision from the parents. I think that rightly belongs to them. I support all of the other aspects of the program with that exception.
Can I ask a question? When we were going through the slides, one of the slides at the last presentation said that teachers, and I don't know if it was will not or shall not, recommend retention if a child had been retained in kindergarten. And I had questioned at that point the shall or the will. I can't remember which one it was, especially since it was a recommendation. You know, I understood not making it mandatory if they had been retained before, but I also think we need to leave it for a teacher, if they want to recommend it, to be able to make that recommendation. Where are we with regard to that aspect? I'm just curious. Are we still at they're not gonna recommend it, or?
The recommendation is, one, if you've been retained in the past, that you would not be retained a second time. So if you've been there once, that would be the only time.
I can just
Casey,
see
that you brought up
I can
was
just see
was
an
a valid
exception.
one. There has to be exceptions, I would think. And if the parent, the teacher, the principal, everybody's on board with it, this policy wouldn't keep us from retaining a child again if everybody wanted it, right? We're not gonna force a child to go through.
I think the parameter that was initially set, as I said, is the child would not be mandatorily retained.
That's it.
Would not be mandatorily retained by the district twice. Okay? One time, but not a second time. That doesn't mean that the parent could not request that their child be retained a second time. And if we had the parent support on that we wouldn't retain them a second time, but you definitely have that piece there. Now, in reference to kindergarten, going to first grade, they have to meet the rubric. If they meet the rubric, demonstrate the skills, then they would be mandatorily promoted to the first grade. But if they don't meet the rubric, then they would be mandatorily retained. So it's a double-edged sword there. The way I understand the second grade readiness, it would be the same. But when you get into third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, for the kid to be retained, it would be at the request of the parent, with the teacher and the principal, everybody being included in that discussion. Is that, Leanne, you
Yes, that's
facilitated these meetings? That first grade teachers, am I saying that? Am I in line with what you're talking about?
So if there is that situation where a child might need to be, might want to be retained, let me say wants instead of need, 2 years in a row, essentially. So they've gone through kindergarten twice, they've gone through first grade, and they're just not quite there to get to second grade for whatever reason. There can be that conversation, but it's not a mandatory conversation. Am I
That's correct.
correct? Okay. My thought on it was, and I had spoken with a friend of mine who agreed to let me use this story, is that her daughter was not able to be retained, and she probably would not have met the rubric that we have set forth. And at this point, she was not in the school district, so let me put that caveat in there. And the principal told her, well, if we hold her back, we're going to ruin our numbers. And that child had not the stigma of being held back, but the stigma of not being at the level that she needed to be for that next school year. And I think by giving us that mandatory component, to a certain extent, I think we are making sure that the program is implemented with fidelity, because the rubric is there, and from everything that I've been told at these presentations, they're not just looking at single aspects, they are looking at the whole child and making that decision. Whereas in this case, because she transferred to a different school district and timing worked out, she was able to be held back essentially a year, and that child has now flourished because she's at the grade level that she needs to be at, but she wasn't able to do that before because we ruined the numbers. And hopefully by doing this program, we're taking that out of the equation. We're not letting them worry about the numbers except on the rubric that's looking at that individual child and that individual child's needs. I think it's a double-edged sword when we talk about, well, the stigma to hold the child back. Well, what's the issue with the child's psyche, I guess, if they're moved on when they're not ready to be moved on?
I don't think as a district, we have any preconceived notion of a number of kids to be mandatorily retained or promoted. I think what we're looking at is simply the data, the skills that the kids have mastered and learned, and in fact, are they ready for the next grade? Do they have the skills to be successful at that next grade, the academic skills?
And that's why I wanted to add the caveat that did not happen in our school district. But the hurt that it caused to that child not being retained when she wasn't fully capable of moving on to the next grade, I think was more damaging, and our mom thinks was more damaging than had she been held back. So, everyone talks about the stigma of being held back. There's another stigma there too.
I don't want any decision that we make to be about our statistics have to look one way or another. I want every decision we make to be what's in the best interest of this child and this family. So I understand what you're saying.
Let's go back to how this program started. 2 or 3 years ago, a lot of elementary faculty meetings where the focus was, oh my gosh, my kids are ranging from year to year. I'm having a hard time educating my classrooms because everybody's everywhere. And I specifically remember one comment of a first grade teacher stating, well, it's not the philosophy of this building to retain kids, which was not even true. But at that point, we realized that every building did not look alike. And I mentioned that earlier tonight. That's an important part of what this district does. And if we're gonna move towards a model district, we need to be able to tell any parent in any boundary area that your kid's gonna get a great education no matter what school they go to. And this, to me, is a perfect way of eliminating the question of, well, this building handles things differently. This first grade teacher is really struggling because her class is ranging from here to here. All those variables, we're trying to pay attention to them. And this was professionally driven. This was from the teachers that drove this. And we, as board members who listened to the faculty meetings and the administration who listened to the faculty meetings, said, you're right. You've asked for help, and it's our job to give you help. This is in the best interest of the kids. You know what? This goes right along with the parent piece that our district has been wanting to work on for years. Cooperation with the parents and getting them more involved. I don't see anything wrong with this piece, especially because it's still in a pilot program. Give us some chance to get some data. Let's mine it. Let's see what success rates we have. Let's see what failures there are. And that's what a pilot does, is it gives us opportunity to learn from the data we do collect. But I think at the beginning of a program like this, we need to be very consistent, and I think that the mandatory retention piece is as important as the rubric, or why have the rubric.
There are so many things, sort of what Jean had said, I want to echo that. There's so many strengths to this, and I think primarily because of the way it was put together. A lot of problems to be solved. One of the concerns I have maybe isn't so much Jean's concern about the parent decision, to the extent that who cares what the date is, it's my child, and fundamental concern I have is data over judgment. If you adhere strictly to data over judgment, then you're not really supporting that classroom teacher. If we get in a situation where the teacher, parent, principal all agree on a strategy, but it doesn't meet the rubric, and so the answer is no. You can't do that. I think we do that individual child who is in their own life story, their own circumstance, a great injustice. If we try to implement this, because of all the good things about it, to the extreme of no exception. And I hear talk now about exception perhaps being considered at the second grade ready decision. And that's a good thing. But I mean, we have exception teachers, and we have great judgment. And I think that develops a great initiative, a good functional rubric that's going to be tested and tried. And by the way, you hate to see any child or teacher slip through the cracks while you're testing the thing out. To that extent, I kind of hate to see it absolutely mandatory right off the bat. We will get better at it because we have good teachers and great process. That's been demonstrated. A few times we had questions about being able to look at the whole child. And what about the unquantifiable considerations? Environment, people, how do we factor that into the rubric? Maybe the team's already on that and you've got a way to quantify that. But to the extent that there's a judgment to be made on what's best for that child, not the committee, not the program, but for that child, I think we do a disservice in making the program absolute. And if it's just a couple of kids that benefit from not making it absolute, hey, it's a couple of kids, a couple of families. So I initially voted for the first grade ready because what the team kept saying is judgment will be applied. And how can you not trust those teachers? But to the extent that it says, that it shuts down not only the parent, which there are some conversations to be had there, their desire, particularly if they're not open to good, strong data at that minimum threshold, but the teacher and the administrator in the building, then we've got to find another flaw. I mean, great goals, but something else has to be factored in there somehow. And so to that extent, I have new concerns about the first grade rate and the way we're implementing it. But certainly that carries on to the second grade. And being an absolute, doesn't sound like it's an absolute. And I wasn't listening, I have to confess, on the first program, making first grade ready, rubric, standards, absolute. I was looking for the real issue that was presented, which was, is this child ready to be promoted? Or does this child really need to be retained? Data-driven, man, everything that the teachers have put together to implement Common Core considerations, it was all great. The responses were, what about the whole picture? No judgment will be applied, and I wasn't looking for mandatory promotion. I just have a concern. Maybe it's working with water and rules and regs, and you're never that good at setting rules to be absolute and have them applicable in the best interest, in this case, of the child, in every case. So I have concerns.
Laura.
I think there's been a lot of teacher judgment being used with regard to the creation of both programs. I think it is up to the individual teacher when they are dealing with that individual child and those parents with regard to making the decisions that they are making. I believe the comment from Leanne at the last meeting we discussed this was that there was only one parent who had concern with regard to retention from kindergarten to first grade.
We've seen a decrease in the number of retentions from 55 to 30, which is contributed, I think, in large part to the more active parent involvement and getting the parents on board with making sure the kids know what they need to know by the end of kindergarten. You know, I think the teacher judgment component is there, and, you know, being the spouse of a teacher and knowing some of these teachers in this school district, I think if there were an issue with regard to this particular program, the other side of this room would be filled with people saying, no, this is the wrong thing to be doing. We have very vocal teachers to make sure that we're doing things right. When I went to the Buffalo Jones faculty meeting, I specifically asked because I had gotten a lot of negative comments about Common Core, so I asked about Common Core at that meeting and asked them, what are you thinking about? And one teacher said, I would be kicking down your door if I thought this was the wrong thing to be doing. And I think we would be having the same thing with this program that we would have with that. If there are mistakes, I think there are differences of opinion. I'm going to put it that way instead of mistakes. I think there are remedies to go through for all parties to be on the same page and making sure the right decision is being made based off of the rubric. So with that, I would like to move to approve the second grade readiness program as presented.
Second.
I'll second.
Laura? Second by Gloria, motion by Laura. Any other questions or discussion?
Well, I just had a few more brief comments. I do believe the way that the program is currently structured removes and severely limits the judgment aspect of it. I believe it is too rigid. It smacks to me more of a research project with our children rather than an actual method to try to improve our educational system. I think it is, it reminds me very much of the problems that people have expressed regarding Common Core, of how government is removing the decisions that in the past families have made and communities have made, and I am concerned about that. It seems to me that we should be partners with our parents and not be more of a dictatorship of what their child is, where they're going to be placed at that level. And I think that all of those issues can be resolved by simply allowing the family to make the decision. Laura's example of problems regarding retention as well as promotion is a very valid one, because I think that we can't anticipate all of the issues that might arise in the future, but having the parents be able to make that decision with the advice and with the work, the communication with their teachers throughout the year is going to make for the best decision possible. I think that we as a board represent our community, and that the families in our community should be making that decision, and that's what I would like to support.
I just want a point of clarification. First grade readiness, automatically see. Second grade readiness, if you update it, see. Will no effect this time. I just want to make it perfectly clear that both of these programs, teacher-driven, teacher-created, administratively supported. We've been through the first year, the with the first grade readiness program. 10 of the 11 elementary schools had principals, 0 problem. Other than in one of those 10, there was a student that scored well below the minimum rubric score for promotion, and the parent was adamant that their kid be promoted. Did not have the skill level to be promoted. Wasn't even close to having the skill level to be promoted. The school that we had, the school that we had the problem in was simply that the student met the rubric, scored the minimum, had the minimum competencies, skills to be promoted. The teacher recommended that they not be promoted. Principal supported. The rubric was administered again to the student. Student made the rubric again. We have till May 15th to continue to instruct these students that didn't make it. And I think in your report, it was stated to you that there may be as many as 4 or 5 students that may make the rubric to be promoted. The same is true. Let's say a kid has made it, but for some reason doesn't in the last, by May 15th. Then the option would be to retain. So I only know of 2 situations out there where we've had a little bit of a problem. One where the kid wasn't even close to making the rubric and the parent wanted to go on anyway. The other one where the kid made the rubric, but the teacher and the support of the parents wanted the kid with help. And we're recommending promotion for that kid because we feel like that she has the skills to do it.
If I could ask, you said recommending that student be passed on. I thought this was mandatory.
No, it is. We're recommending that they're going to be passed on. And of course, you know the rule is on the board.
Individual kids.
Well, I mean, it could come down to that, but we've never done that before in the district.
I just wanted to say that whether something in our district affects one child or 1,000 kids, it really doesn't matter in terms of how important that is in our decision-making. If we can avoid affecting even one child, I think that this is the right thing to do. Because I think it doesn't strip this program of any of its validity or any of the good parts of this. It just simply changes this one aspect to be more family-friendly. I would urge you to consider that in making your decision tonight.
Mark? Quick comment. To the extent that this program resulted in an experienced kindergarten teacher and close collaboration with the parents and the principal, not on the side of mandatory retention, but on the side of mandatory promotion, recommended an alternative. And to me, that's and then the mandate of the rubric overrides that. That, I don't know how we have other resources in the district that are more in tune with that child's need than that team right there. And so my concern is even having an example the first year where the committee or the district overrides that team of parent, teacher, administrator, I think just illustrates a weakness. I don't think it kills the program by any means. But as we talked about, as we're doing here on this issue of second grade readiness, that we can have some latitude, this is judgment. Why can't we have some latitude and judgment on the first question? out there that if a child is sort of to benefit from delay or being held back, it may be the earlier the better. I think it just is an illustration, not necessarily a hiccup, but an illustration of the potential weakness, and certainly something to look closer at as a team of developers.
Mark, who would you be on the student for the school that scored the 17 on the rubric and the parent wishes for them to be promoted? I think I understand where Jean is on that. She's on both sides of this, making a recommendation.
She's on a point of fundamentally removing the decision.
Right.
To me, just to answer your question, I think this whole development and what I've been presented with was to address that very issue, where we have teachers that have to deal with that child, and as that child runs into a difficulty of meeting basic standards, that whole collaboration, the whole process up to that point of the rubric decision is meant to engage everybody involved with that child and try to get that child past a minimum standard.
So would you promote that child or retain that child in that example?
Well, based on what they put together, I think the purpose there would be to retain the child. Now, but the difference between the other issue about mandatory promotion is that, I mean, the way I heard the presentation was, we've got to meet some minimum skills here if they're going to be first grade ready. And in this case, minimum skills if they're going to be second grade ready. But I see that minimum not as a, okay, they're good with first grade. The mandatory promotion side, to me, is what I'm uncomfortable with.
In the interest of time management, unless there's some other new issues that we want to bring up, let's go ahead and take a vote and see where it falls. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Opposed? Good. Thank you for the discussion. I think it was a good discussion.
I do, may I make one more comment? Yes. Drew will be monitoring the program. And we had a meeting with the kindergarten teachers. We're going to be monitoring it, and there will be adjustments made in the program over time. I think, at the recommendation of the teachers, they're going to see what things need to be tweaked over time. And it may start to look a little differently over time. I guess we'll see what it looks like. And I think one of the problems that we had at the one school was apparently for some reason or another, it wasn't clearly communicated to that building where they understood that there was a system that we went clearly by the rubric, because it was clearly understood in every other school.
For all decisions.
Yeah. And I don't think for some reason it was clearly communicated there for the others.
For the committee members that are here, thank you very much for your time and effort. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. KJ.